Pico y Deporte, afuera. Ministerio de Cultura, afuera. Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible, afuera. Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera. Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera. Aunque te resistas. Ministerio de Ciencia y Tecnología e Innovación, afuera. Ministerio de Trabajo, Empleo y Seguridad Social, afuera. Ministerio de Educación, Adoctrinamiento, afuera. Ministerio de Transporte, afuera. Ministerio de Salud, afuera. Ministerio de Desarrollo Social, afuera. Se acabó el curro de la política. ¡Viva la libertad, carajo!
Things are going to start happening to me now.
You've done all the reading. You're a scholar, you're a professor. You've done all the reading. You've done the intellectual heavy lifting.
More or less, eat shit and die.
You wouldn't know a fact if it begged you all night long.
Want to give the wrong impression, because I am very high.
Ran up behind him with a hatchet. Smash, smash, smash.
Yeah. Care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you.
And welcome everybody to the Libertarian Podcast Review. We've got a special one today. We're going to talk about, is he a dead man? Javier Milei? No, he's live. So for now, people are saying, some people out there are saying he's a CIA plant. We're going to talk to you about him today. I've got an expert, I think we call him an expert. Chris Baker of the Fountainhead Podcast. But before we do that, I just want you to know, one thing you can do to help support this show is go to foxandsons.com. They have coffee, and with that coffee, you just put up their promo code REVIEW, and you get 15% off orders of 25 or more. I get all my coffee from them. You should too. And now let's get right into it. Let's add Chris in here. Chris Baker from the Fountainhead Podcast, and he's an author. How are you doing, Chris? Welcome.
It's the Fountainhead Forum, but yes, thank you.
Sorry, it's right.
Yeah, how are you, Tyler? Yeah, it's nice to talk to you here. Yeah,
you too. So before we get going too far, I want to know a few things. One is your involvement in where your politics are. I assume you're somewhat libertarian. Give us your brand of libertarianism. And then why are you so interested in Milei? Do you have some sort of connection with South America? Do you speak Spanish? We'll go that. So maybe start with the first part, and then we'll go to the next part.
Well, I think I've always been a libertarian. I was 17 in 1988. I probably shouldn't have said that because that gives away my age. But I would have voted for Ron Paul if I could have. I did know about Ron Paul, and this was before the internet. So I was so then I discovered book catalogs. This was when how you did it back then. You got on book catalogs and got on mailing lists and got these book catalogs. And then I went to, believe it or not, I started with Loom Panics Unlimited, discovered Laissez-Faire Books, Liberty Tree. And then the first time I went out and connected was a seminar at the Foundation for Economic Education. There were still a lot of really old school people there at the time. Wonderful, like Bettina B. N. Graves and Ed Opitz, wonderful people had been there since the 50s. I can even say that while I never met him, I did get a phone call from Carl Hess once.
Wow.
Sorry I didn't meet him, but yeah. I got into Ayn Rand in 92. I went around to some other seminars. I interned at Liberty Magazine for 6 months from 96 to 97. I've sometimes said that was the happiest 6 months of my life. I've been active with the Libertarian Party since the mid 90s as well. Although sometimes I'm more active than others. And I was involved. I did do some block walking for Ron Paul in 2008, 2012, and saw how that worked. So I won't say that Ron Paul really had any impact on my thinking, but I certainly supported him. And other books like The Road to Serfdom by Hayek and so I'm here now, and I started going to the Liberty International Conference in 2019. I went to Anarchapulco in 2018. So I started to become a little more international in my libertarian thinking, and that's I like South America. Believe it or not, I first visited South America in Peru. I have never been to Argentina. I'm not fluent in Spanish, which is one caveat. I've made sure that everybody that comes on my show has been fluent in Spanish to discuss Milei. So it's really, that's just where we are. And, I thought, it's often said, did you learn you learn more from failure than you learn from your success? But I think that reverses itself when you have so much failure and so few wins. You have to try to learn from the wins. And this is a win, and we need to examine this and study it as much as we possibly can, because this is, especially with the last 3 years, it's been a very dark time for liberty, and it's nice to see a bright light come out like this. And the other thing too, Tyler, it's easy to get people to talk about this.
Yeah.
I say, hey, you want to come on my show and talk about Milei? I mean, almost all of them say yes. They're excited. They're enthusiastic. They want to talk about this.
So let's get into, first of all, what brought you kind of him to your attention? Okay, you said you're an international, so maybe you're just much more acutely aware. I mean, I saw him, I didn't know anything about it until he won like the first round of the primary. I think they did a primary, and then the final. And you could talk to us about that. But did you know about him prior to that? And had you been doing any shows about him previously?
No, I did see a show that was done by Olga Maria, who's also known as Latina Libertarian.
Yeah,
I've had her on twice. So, and she was talking to a guy who works, volunteers with the Milei campaign. But then as soon as the news hit, I think there was like, oh my goodness, this could really happen. And then I just really did a, binge podcasting. It's funny, but I think you learn things in spurts. You start binging, and I found, there are a lot of people out there who do know more about him than I do. And then I found some people who work at various organizations who know about him. I talked to Jorge Trucco, who went to Anarchapulco in 2015, who knows about him. Jorge translated The Market for Liberty by Morris and Linda Tannehill into Spanish, and he gave that to Milei, and that apparently turned Milei anarcho-capitalist.
Interesting.
I'm also learning that there is a very much a Spanish tradition of liberalism that I was not aware of. Even going back to, say, the School of Salamanca and some other writers. I don't know what really happened to that tradition, but it is there. One of Milei's influence is a guy named Alberto Benegas Lynch, another economist from South America. There's also Jesus. Another one of Milei's teachers is Jesus Huerta de Soto. I mean, these are some other people who have influenced Milei. As far as I don't think Milei knows English, so he's still not really accessing those sources, but he's accessing the Spanish people and the translations.
So Phoenix chimes in here: primary, general, and runoff. Okay, so that's I don't know. Those are the things I'm finding out about. So I appreciate any kind of thing. What the language barrier is fascinating to me. Other than only because he's become so popular in the right wing or our English speaking media in a sense, without that ability to communicate. In English. I mean, he does a Tucker Carlson interview, and it's for me. I watch a lot of stuff while I'm doing other things, and so that one was difficult because I had to pay attention to the transcript. But with that in mind, he comes across, and I played that video at the open there where he's throwing things. His what he does say translates even on TikTok and those things of like no good, you're out, and those kind of things. So why don't you start here by giving us a little bit of a backdrop of, because there's going to be people, friends and other people that are watching it now. It says Libertarian Podcast Review. You may not really know much more about libertarianism than just what you kind of hear, which, by the way, is an interesting aspect of some of the criticism or acceptance. Some of the neocon right-wingers are all excited. Michael Knowles, as an example, he's like, oh, this is pretty cool. Yet he's gone on, he's from Daily Wire. He's gone on and explicitly talked about how libertarians have driven the right wing into a hole, and they're the responsible party for this. So it's interesting to see these little dichotomies here. But can you explain Milei's politics as you see him? He describes himself as an ANCAP. So maybe just give a description of what, in your understanding, that means, and kind of where he is on that libertarian spectrum.
Well, he has dogs named Murray and Milton for Murray Rothbard and Milton Friedman. So it seems as though he basically wants to go in and cut everything. I've been told he's mostly a non-interventionist, and he also wants to. And somebody else also said that he recommended Lysander Spooner's "Vices Are Not Crimes." So I still don't know all of his positions, but he's definitely in favor of cutting a lot of things. I mean, anybody who wants to cut the government by about 80%, I would say is a libertarian. And he sees a lot of the problems there, and he's done. And I've really been trying to figure out what is he doing that other people haven't done. There was another guy, Jose Luis Espert, who ran 4 years ago, and he got like 1 or 2% of the vote. And I'm finding that number one, he has a cool factor about him.
Yeah.
He's made himself really cool to the public, so that makes it cool to go out and vote for him. So his votes with under 30 he's doing very well with voters under 30. And I think that probably also comes from the fact that he was in a rock band and also an athlete. So that's made him cool. So maybe we need to get candidates, who were in rock bands and athletes.
Right. I mean, the best we were possibly having was a Dave Smith comedian podcaster, but I don't know that
Dave Smith, I think Kane, Glenn Jacobs, and although he hates the LP, Mark Pellegrino, the actor, I think would be very good because
he's more an objectivist.
Yeah,
he's
I know.
Actually, yeah.
But so there's definitely some he's definitely got a personality that I think that works. Not knowing everything about all the nuances, and apparently he got on a talk show, and he started getting invited onto more and more talk shows, so people were seeing him more and more, and then he decided to translate that into politics. So it's I haven't watched it from day one. I've only talked to people who watched it from the beginning, and some of these people have known him for a long time. So it's very interesting.
I do find it fascinating how he, you see this all the time in politics. Oh, you've got to kind of water down your thinking. Don't be so strident. You're going to push people out. And he is the most strident, about what calling the lefties all kinds of names, socialist, doesn't care. And he goes for it like that. And sometimes that makes your vision, like you said, some people can be scared of that. But for me, it's almost like, oh, he's got principles. And so maybe that's part of that thing that you could take from there. But with that in mind, I think a lot of this is to do with how bad Argentina is currently. Yeah. Can you give us a state of where what the economy is? Because to me, it's like that's everything. Right now, it's just the economy is everything. We don't really care about some of your other issues. I mean, some people may, and they try to scare. But for the most part, oh, and by the way, question on this. You talked about the young voters. Is it mandatory voting in Argentina? Is it voluntary voting? Some countries have mandatory voting. Do you know if there's anything like that?
I think it is mandatory voting. Another interesting thing was the socialists lowered the voting age to 16, thinking that younger voters would be socialists, and this is blown up in their faces.
That's fascinating.
It's very funny. As far as the conditions, I mean, I've recently seen videos of people lining up for gas. A lot of things people are already transacting a lot in dollars, like they're buying cars with dollars, buying real estate with dollars. At one, I believe, the Argentine peso was at one point equal to the dollar, and now it's about 1,000. I think that was 20 years ago, but it's been a while. And I've even looked at their peso versus the Mexican peso, and it's doing just as badly against the Mexican peso. So if that gives you an idea. I mean, it's even getting to a point where, people are going to Bolivia and buying things from Bolivia and bringing them across. Apparently, when Tucker came to do his interview, they asked Tucker all kinds of questions because it's like, why are you bringing all this equipment in here? And Tucker and apparently, they tried to tell him, we're just bringing this stuff in here temporarily. They were going to try to, hit him with tariffs or something. It was it's very hard to start a business. You've got to go through all these local red tape and other things. There's also very much a divide, I think, between the area around Buenos Aires and the rest of the country. there are definitely a lot of issues there, and it's unfortunate because go back 120 years, it was one of the richest countries in the world.
What has been their political structure over the years? I know Perón was like a cry for me Argentina and all that stuff. But what has it been since then, or even has it been mostly socialist?
Yeah, well, apparently, I forgot the guy's name, but he modeled a lot of things after the American Constitution. This was in the late 1800s, and Argentina did very well. And Perón took over in 1946. There was a worldwide depression. Perón came to power. I mean, actually, he was in power before that. Perón was actually friends with the the Nazis and the fascists and a lot of, he was president from 46 to 55, but, there were other, he was very popular, and, Argentina became a haven for a lot of Nazis who got out. And that was, led to some, and he was a general, and that led to some implementing, some socialist policies, but maybe more like the fascists, more dedicated to work, but more corporatism. It's I still not really sure what Peronism is, and there have been cases where Perón goes out of power, and some as people left power. One of the guys who was running against Milei, his father was actually exiled when Perón went out of power, and then he came back. So, and then of course there was a lot of fighting back in the 70s, almost kind of a civil war. Patricia Bullrich was a terrorist back in the 70s, and she was the third place person who actually endorsed Milei after the second election. So that was rather interesting. And then now they've had what they call Kirchnerism, which is a variant of Peronism, but just lots of government programs, lots of government spending, but maybe not quite. But I think it's maybe more of it's communism, but adopted to, the Hispanics political structure. It's definitely a pretty corrupt system, though. I mean, Milei often talks about the caste, and, there was a chant at the end of the third debate that started, La casta tiene miedo, which is the caste has fear. Yeah.
So you're talking about corruption, my only real experience with some of this in South America, you go to Mexico and, things are just a little bit different. Maybe you could just give a police officer a little bit of money and, your ticket is washed away or whatever. Maybe that's a stereotype too. Is that kind of what it's like down there? Because this could be somewhat troublesome to overcome. But I take it, as you said, economics is the biggest thing. Is crime a problem as well?
I think, from what I hear, crime is a problem. You don't want people to know that you have a lot of dollars on you. You might get robbed. I don't know how much, there is of bribing cops like there is in Mexico. I mean, I've been to Mexico and I've never really felt like I was in danger. It's really hard to analyze so I can't really say for sure what all the issues are. I mean, there's a lot of bureaucracy, though. I talked to one guy who made the mistake of going out and bringing back 2 laptops, and they actually taxed him on the second laptop, even though they were both his. So there's a lot of that.
So it's a different kind of theft rather than just stealing it. They're like, well, you know what? We're just going to tax you. We're going to tariff you to death.
It's hard to start businesses. I mean, I've heard stories of people who lost everything due to the Peronistas. And people are, and when you have this inflation, that's just really the ultimate form of a tax. I mean, because people can't save and they can't, you have to buy things with all cash immediately and stuff like that. There's no loans, there's no room for growth.
So let's talk about the election real quick. And I've got a bunch of good questions, I promise. Let's talk about the election. Who is he running against, and where were their politics? And kind of interesting, the main thing is, we're not really, they're not battling a culture war necessarily when your inflation is 147%, right? That's the thing you can talk to everybody about is the economics. What were the other party's solutions, or if you know that, but who else was he running against, and kind of where were their politics?
Well, after it's a very wide open systems, but after the first election in August, they ended up with 5 people remaining, and that was Milei, Sergio Massa, who was the Minister of Finance, and although the incumbent did not run for re-election. Gotcha. There was Patricia Bullrich, who had been involved in various government positions for a while. There was Juan Schiaretti, who was the governor of the province of Cordoba, who was really probably the only one that you would call an outsider, at least as far as not part of the Buenos Aires establishment. Because Milei, I'm not saying Milei's party establishment, but he was in the Congress. So, yeah. and then there was Patricia Bregman, who was an outright communist. She got 1 or 2%. Schiaretti got, I think, around 6 or 7%. I have to say, watching the debates, I kind of liked him because I just kind of thought maybe this is a guy Milei could work with, because he was complaining about a lot of the things coming out of Buenos Aires, and I think he was complaining about how federal interference in local affairs, stuff like that. The same way, you'll hear governors here complain about the feds. And Bullrich has an interesting background. She was a terrorist back in the 70s, involved with the Montoneros, I believe it was, which was, and then she became more of a mainstream politician. I'm not really sure what her policies were, and Massa being the Minister of Finance, you could kind of say that he was just for more of the same.
I mean, U.S. politics is similar, where you see especially the duopoly, where you see, let's say, Bernie Sanders and Trump, they identify the same problem, and their solutions aren't really the same. Like school loans, or they don't go back to the source and the problem. So it's always the administrator that's I'm going to administrate it differently. So Milei, I imagine with him, it's not about I'm going to manage it. It's I'm going to destroy this department.
Yes.
And it's going to let something else take over. Is that kind of
that's the way it was. Yeah. And Massa was the guy that Milei beat on Sunday. He was the one left standing. Massa, when first it became the top 5 and Milei was ahead, but then Massa in the second election actually ended up being ahead. And then it looks like Massa went from 36 to about 44, and Milei went from 29 or 30 to 55. I mean, wow. So percent. So yeah, it was not a close election at all, which is certainly nice to see, and I've heard some talk about, people voting twice and doing weird things with the ballots and trying to turn the election away. But and Massa, for example, they decided to cut the income tax when Milei was winning, said, okay, you don't have to pay more income tax. They were trying to bribe. It's almost like a bribe. I don't think it worked. Yeah, it was pretty. It's really nice to see this happen. It's this is. I was jokingly saying, no, I was serious. I was saying this could be the most important election in the history of the world.
So what's the big takeaway from his election? I mean, personally, I'll just say I think it's not so much even whether he. I mean, it'd be great to see him do this and be successful, but it's the idea that 56% or so of a country decided that his rhetoric was what they wanted.
I'm still not sure about that, but sometimes what I think maybe is evident here is that it has to get really bad before the public wants real radical change.
Yeah.
I imagine, seeing what's happened with Venezuela might have influenced them. They said, because they didn't want to go the way of Venezuela, and they might have even had, Venezuelan immigrants go there. I do think the fact that it's more of an open voting system and more of, there's not a rigged duopoly there like there is here, helps. And other thing too, but I also think he was doing things that definitely doing some things that libertarians in America could learn from. He would often carry a chainsaw around to various rallies and stuff. I'm hearing some of our people here saying, I need to start taking a chainsaw around. And in fact, one candidate said, yeah, somebody sent me a chainsaw chain, to take to my events. So.
I could see the GOP doing something like that because they're not always original. So they've this guy and then they're going to be the next Milei. But it seems like to me that he's authentically either crazy or, as they say, the madman, or this is him. This is authentically him.
Well, to a certain degree, aren't we all a little bit crazy, Tyler? I mean, we're in this group. We're in this. We're part of this movement that is that we care enough to be a part of it, but we still stick by it. And even though it's not really doing very well, you gotta be pretty dedicated to keep doing this. But I think it's another thing too is the word liberal still has its original meaning down there. I've said for a long time that I think we either need to reclaim the word liberal or maybe call ourselves something else. In fact, I realized during one talk, I said, let's call this rock star liberalism, to make it sound cool. And because the term classical liberalism is just, it's got to go. You might as well say I'm a has-been liberal, or I'm an antiquated liberal, or an old school liberal. Something that's classical isn't going to be cool. It's old,
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that name's done. I mean, it's too well associated with like a progressive. Yeah. So, and that, you're right. So if it's down there and it's still being used and you're saying libertarian, he's just liberal.
Let's remember,
ANCAP? Did he call himself an ANCAP though down there?
I think he has called himself an ANCAP at times, and let's remember, liberty, LIBR, liberal, LIBR. It's not an accident that those words have the same root.
Yeah.
So I think he has, I talked to one guy who said that Milei converted him to being a libertarian. He had kind of laughed at it, and he was in his 30s, and then Milei convinced him. So I think he's really becoming a great ambassador. I think this is I even went on a Twitter poll and just said, who's the greatest libertarian ever? And I said, Ayn Rand, Murray Rothbard, or Javier Milei. I think he's still got some time left too. He's only in his early 50s. There's still a lot of work, still a lot of good things he could do. Educate educate a couple more generations of Mileis would be awesome.
Yeah, it depends on how. I mean, now he's put himself out there. Like you talked about Ayn Rand and Murray Rothbard. Those are doing philosophy, or Murray was doing economics.
Murray was doing economics. Murray was doing a lot of things.
Well,
Murray was a machine when it came to writing. Right. He wrote lots of books, wrote lots of articles. Yeah.
Right. But my point is, he didn't run for office. So this is a different type of a libertarian, which is successful, because that is not particularly we have, and is in charge of a country. No matter what country it is, he is in charge of a country. But let's walk through some of his some of the questions or some of the issues that people have had. Start with the easy one. I imagine for you, it was for me. Concerns about him being part of the WEF, World Economic Forum.
Yeah, well, I've seen a video of this, and he was invited once to speak there, and he spoke his mind, and they never invited him back. And apparently the World Economic Forum puts all these people on their website, even if they were there just once.
Yeah. And a matter of fact, just a note, Vivek Ramaswamy, I think the same thing happened to him. He sued them for them to remove him. So you're on there. Yeah. And so, but there's a lot of people that are concerned about this because there's pictures of him. I found that and then I found a tweet, you had translated where he's like, my ideas are not in line with this. And it's a nice way to smear it. And a lot of libertarians are using that to the truth test. So that one, there you go. Now, when imagine during the election, his whole plan and his ideas were antithesis to the ideas of the WEF. Is that confirmed?
Yeah, he's very much against the 2030 agenda. Yeah, all that stuff. He's come out against that. Yes.
Okay. BRICS. What about BRICS?
Well, Bricks, I think I think he probably wants to go to a free market in money, but he sees dollarization as maybe a step toward that. I mean, we often have our ideals, but we don't really have a route to get from point A to point B. And I think dollarization is a step towards stabilizing the economy. I mean, I don't think you can. Bitcoiners are generally positive about Milei, and he's definitely seems like he's pro Bitcoin. In fact, there was a picture of him with Nayib Bukele from El Salvador, who is I sometimes call him President Bitcoin because they've made Bitcoin legal tender there. So I definitely think there's a good influence. He also had a list of some people who had sent him congratulations, and I thought that was very telling. People like Lasso in Ecuador, Maria Corina Machado in Venezuela, and Maria Corina is a major hero. I mean, she's not allowed to leave the country. She's putting her life on the line. American libertarians should definitely know who Maria Corina Machado is. Bukele even got positive. The president of Armenia sent him congratulations. The Pope congratulated him. He did also. There was also on Twitter some of who some of his enemies are, and they were the new dictator of Cuba, Maduro in Venezuela, Petro in Colombia. And it's like I said, that's a good enemies list to have. It's
right. Now there was evidently, there's all. This is the problem with the language barrier thing. It's hard to just go to first source, but someone said, oh, he had called the Pope trash or something like that. What's the deal there?
He's definitely said things about the Pope, but if you look at what Pope Francis has done, I mean, he's an absolutely horrible communist. I mean, Tom Woods and Jeff Deist bash the Pope all the time. Deist called him Argentina's worst export, the execrable Francis or something like that. Yeah, it's a
he's hosting trannies this week, so we
yeah. But that that's definitely a risky thing to do because you're in a very Catholic country. Right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I don't know the context of that, but you're right. The Pope walks the line with kind of the communist ideas. So if you're bashing that, and it's just one more person or person. Now, okay, what else we got here? WF BRICS. Okay, so you talked about central bank. My understanding is he's like, I want to just adopt the dollar, or use that. What are the ideas around that? Because I've actually heard Mises and some others talk about this in a positive way, which is, look, we don't want to be on this with the Fed either, but for where they're at, and you always have to take into account where Argentina's at and what are their steps to getting someplace. They're in such bad economic state that they want to do something. And my understanding is he doesn't want their central bank to control it. So what's the understanding there?
Well, because the dollar is a much larger currency. It's going to have less volatility. Just that, just the same way that stock in Exxon is going to be less volatile than say stock in some small company. So that's going to make, again, I think he just, Milei sees, he wants to treat the immediate symptoms, but he wants to treat the disease. Yeah. And he realizes that inflation is a symptom that has to be treated immediately. And I think he sees that as a way to treat that symptom. It may not necessarily be what he wants long-term, but that's a way to, get off of this. And it's been done in Ecuador. It's been done in El Salvador. So there are some models for this,
Panama, I think, as well.
Yeah. And, also I don't know what as far as foreign policy is concerned, what would happen if there was, a truly capitalist president in a country who wasn't really throwing any bones to the U.S. I mean, I think if he was, I'm kind of surprised the U.S. hasn't invaded El Salvador really, just because because of Bukele. I don't know if they tolerate this, and get things in order, and then maybe Argentina can really go more their own way, and it's not a big country, it's not a really large country, but it's not a small country either. It's in the middle.
Yeah. So let me what else? Oh, social issues. What are his ideas on social issues? So I saw a podcast a month or so ago. It was the Reason podcast. Weissmuller and I think it was Nick Gillespie, and they talked to some people that were in the know from down there, and it was a pretty good one. And they particularly are not in agreement with Milei's, abortion stance or whatever. But what was interesting is a lot of the ANCAPs that I follow on Twitter, Daniel McAdams, as an example, just outright thinks this is a horrible situation for like one issue. And yet the Reason types are able to overlook some of the social issues and take this guy. Like, something's wrong here. But what are his social issues and how are those being perceived down there?
I haven't heard, he, for example, does want to allow people to sell their organ transplants. I don't know how that would work out. He's mentioned also that I do believe he's against abortion. He's been a tantric, apparently a tantra coach too, believe it or not. I mean, so I don't know. I don't know, but I haven't heard him say, does he favor legalized prostitution or not? And what is his stance on drugs or not? He does favor Argentines having guns. So there are some issues I still haven't really fully gotten it. I do think I can understand the concerns about foreign policy. In fact, there was a debate on October 8th, the day right after, what happened in Israel. And 4 of the 5 candidates said, yes, basically, yes, we love Israel, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The only one who didn't say it was Patricia Bregman, who is the communist. So one thing I've been wondering though, most of these countries don't really stick their nose into everybody's business like the U.S. does.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he really is advocating for, getting involved in various conflicts and stuff. I mean, he got a congratulatory message from the president of Armenia, and the Armenians do not like Israel at all, because Israel has been helping Azerbaijan. So that was telling. So I don't know. And I do have to wonder too, what does the Spanish media say when they talk about the Middle East? As far as I know, if Daniel McAdams is concerned about what Milei thinks, he should probably get some of these things translated into Spanish and show them to Milei. I mean, I know our anti-war movement in America is already strapped for cash to begin with, but I don't know if there's, but it'd be great if they'd put some stuff out in Spanish and maybe Milei would read it. I don't
know if the Ron Paul Institute, if they put out their stuff in Spanish as an example. A great point. But then again, with that in mind, first of all, Milei, kind of just the idea of let's start with an easy thing, which is economics. And then from there, maybe you move out to some of the non-intervention. But what is, other than the Falkland Islands a few years ago, what is Argentina involved in as far as foreign interests or influence? I would say nothing. I know he's somewhat sided with Ukraine and Israel, but even with that in mind, I don't think he is going to do anything other than lip service for that.
I don't think there's really anything. Except for the Falklands, or as they call them, the Islas Malvinas. I don't think they've really been involved in any war. And that actually came up during the debate with Massa. I think Massa started and said, "Oh my God, why are they fighting over these little islands?" I mean, it was once described as 2 bald men fighting over a comb. I mean, ultimately, I don't think anybody really wants to live there. I mean, the British hang on to it because it's a military outpost. But if they pulled out, everybody would get up and leave. And I jokingly said on one of my shows, I said, you should just let the Penguins vote on it, because they're the only ones that really want to be there. It's
Someone, Fennec said they were in the Gulf War in the 90s. Could be.
Okay.
I can't confirm. Not a great look either way. With that.
Because a lot of these countries just, they don't have a lot of money to spend on.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of money to spend on the military. And as far as I know too, that, does Boeing have a factory there? Does Lockheed Martin have a factory there? I don't really know. It's
I would even be suspicious that perhaps the U.S. would be like, hey, you send a few guys over, we're going to pay you to be doing this, or give you some munition or something to make it worth your while. I could see something like that, but even then, what's really happening?
And I know there was a horrible war with Paraguay maybe in the late 1800s or something that were it was literally maybe it was a bunch of countries ganged up on Paraguay, and it was really a horrible war because these countries are so much larger than Paraguay, but it wiped out like a very significant portion of the male population. But yeah, but there's been.
Oh, go ahead.
I think because all the countries down there, or at least most of them, speak the same language, there really haven't been a lot of wars in South America. If there's if there's any fighting, really, it's still among the descendants of the Europeans versus the indigenous. And I don't know if Argentina has much of an indigenous population left.
They say when goods cross borders, guns don't, right? So what is the trade situation with Argentina and its bordering countries or with the world? Do you know?
I'm not really sure. Apparently they export meat. They have some resources. That's not really something I'm, obviously they have one of the longest borders in the world with Chile, and they have, I think it's the third longest border in the world. And of course, they have a border with Brazil. They have Uruguay and Paraguay. So I don't really know what their relations are. I mean, I think, obviously you can't just isolate yourself, and a lot of the countries in South America don't really, aren't really that involved in the world, trade with the world. So I really don't know the answers to this, though. I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's fine. What about same idea though? What's Milei's idea for? You talked about people bringing stuff in, getting taxed heavily. Maybe with him, kind of the excitement and the focus of the world down there. If you could remove some of these barriers, you might start getting a lot of tourism. It's a gorgeous country. My brother-in-law grew up there till he was age 12. Still has gone back a few times. So yeah.
Oh yeah, it is a gorgeous country. Yeah, and it's still a very, and it's a pretty big country by land area. There's a lot of open space there, although a lot of it's very cold and nobody really wants to go there. But it's, they certainly have a lot of beef and meat and they've generally been So I definitely think he'll try to get rid of some of these agencies. I don't know what order he's going to go in. I think he's going to try to remove all the barriers to starting businesses. It's very hard to start a business there, as they like to call them, the SMEs, the small and medium enterprises, and just let people start business, and of course get the currency stabilized. He's already mentioned some agencies that are going to go.
Yeah, I heard him something about a Ministry of Gender or something like that.
Yeah.
When does he officially take office? Has he taken office?
That's December 10th.
Okay, so they have a little bit of time to try to kill him. Or
yeah. I don't know what's going to happen. And I've seen people say he's got a pretty good list of people on his team. He's got it's going to be very interesting. But apparently Nayib Bukele in El Salvador has invited him. Hey, you want to come up and hang out, show him what he's been doing, because the crime, it's very, it'll be very interesting. I hope this works out, because the worst case scenario right now is it ends up being somebody like Alan Greenspan, because that will totally discredit the ideas. We need, and I think he needs to go out and act fast. And if you want to cut 10 government agencies, you got to ask them to cut 20.
Yeah. Quick thing. So tell me, because someone just mentioned here about the VP. Talk to me about her real quick. But before that, did you mean with Alan Greenspan the fact that he used to be associated with Ayn Rand, and then when he became more prominent, he was just almost a sellout to these ideas?
Yeah, he was a complete sellout. He didn't try to do anything. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's another thing too is we don't really have any history to learn from here. I don't know of any democratic country that has cut a bunch of programs. I mean, I think it happened to a certain extent in New Zealand in 1983 with Roger Douglas, but we can look back now and see where New Zealand is. That certainly wasn't permanent. I hope this works out. Some people say you should, maybe look to some of the Eastern Europe or the Central European people, leaders who cut back the government after the fall of communism or something like that. He's really, going into uncharted territory here. It's he's a pioneer. And,
yeah, he should look to Lieberland. They're I'm just kidding. I also think with what was the final tally? Was it 56? That's the last I remember seeing something that he got.
55 point something, 44 point something with various. I think. Obviously it was there. Yeah, there was.
And with that amount, I think that almost might protect him in a way, because if you've got it's not like, you won on, 20%, but there was multiple candidates. So it's spread it out and you don't even have this is a majority. This is a true mandate, which means you go and kill him. You're going to have basically a civil war in this country, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll help protect him.
I do worry about, if there's going to be any rioting by the opponents.
Yeah,
I saw a video, of Massa supporters throwing rocks at Milei supporters, which and things like that. Although rock throwing is fairly benign compared to other things, but it's still not a very nice thing to do. Right. Some of the communists like Maduro and the Cubans. They've been funding these revolutionary groups since the 70s.
Yeah,
stirring the pot in other Spanish-speaking, other South American countries, whether it be the Shining Path or FARC in Peru or FARC in Colombia. So there was an interesting tweet, that Petro in Colombia sent it out and just thought it was horrible that Milei got elected, and Bukele saw that tweet, and obviously this was all in Spanish. He says, "Now say it without crying." It's like, he's. I mean, really, the battle has just begun. Really, in a lot of ways, this is the harder battle now. Is to actually do some.
So with that in mind, what is his power? Do you know what, like the governmental structure? Look, president. What can they do? I mean, is there anything? I mean, he's going to, hopefully he's got all these great ideas, but if you don't have some sort of coalition or Congress that's going to work with you, what can he do? And what are the restrictions he has on that?
Yeah, well, I'm not really totally sure of those. I mean, some of these things are going to have to be passed through the legislature, which La Libertad Avanza does not have a majority or even close to one in the legislature. They're going to have to work with other people. I believe gave Patricia Bullrich some kind of job. So that's his VP Victoria Villarruel. She's an interesting lady. She's daughter of a veteran from the war over the Malvinas, and she's probably more into security and stuff like that. I don't think she's necessarily a libertarian, but that could be but I've heard good things about her. So yeah, there's definitely it's going to be very interesting to see what he can do here, and also what the outgoing regime tries to see if they try to sabotage the success beforehand.
One other thing that I saw a picture of him. He was getting a vaccine shot. So he obviously got the shot. Is he against mandates? How does he feel about the crucial part of that scenario?
I don't know if he said anything specifically about mandates, but during the the final debate, toward the end, he talked about this coronavirus tyranny and completely said, yeah, this was horrible. So I would say he's against mandates, but I don't have anything specifically that he specifically said to that. These are all very important questions, Yeah. So,
I mean, like I even understood him, like gay marriage. I think he was talking about that, where he's like, I don't want the state involved in these kind of decisions. So he's kind of, I mean, really, the answers are Murray Rothbard-esque on a lot of the things that I was doing, which is, I don't really know what you want to do. However, as far as forcing you to do something from the government's perspective, we're going to kind of try to stay out of that. Okay.
Yeah. And he certainly calls the left. He certainly calls the left. He calls a spade with regard to the left. He hates the left. It's interesting too. Massa was trying to, getting on me later during the debate, said, "You're being disrespectful." And but it was funny too. Toward after the second debate, some people were saying is Patricia Bregman in love with him? It was kind of, I mean, she was kind of looking at him and just like, the communist was like, it's so, and people were making memes about that. It was so funny to watch, yeah.
What's your take on like the news media here in the States? You see it and it's like, oh, he's Trump-like, populist. And some of I saw an article today, actually, Nick Gillespie had tweeted it out, and it was talking about basically to the MAGA people. And they're like, he's no MAGA. And they talk about all these different things. And it's almost taken it from what I would say with the wrong perspective, which is this guy's, mine is like, this guy's too good. He's better than Trump at these things. And so, but what do you take about like hard right? He's Trump-like in some of these analysis.
Well, the left I've known for a long time that the left is incapable of, making any distinctions between the non-left.
Yeah.
For them, everybody who isn't the left is the same. So I'm not surprised. I don't think he can. Trump did actually post a video. Congratulations to Javier Milei. But I mean, I don't think Trump could get through a copy of economics in one lesson, so he's certainly not going to get through any Rothbard books, it's so yeah, I mean, he's very knowledgeable. This is what's interesting about Milei is he seems like a guy who would, he would go to one party and be able to hang out with the nerds and then go to another party and be able to hang out with the cool kids and hang out with the jocks.
Yeah.
You don't get a person like this very often. I mean, I think this is really remarkable. And if the libertarian movement is going to be successful, we've got to get personalities like Milei. I don't know if there aren't very many of them like that.
No. And by the way, that doesn't mean that it's a show. What that really means is that to bring interest to these ideas, you have to have a way of bringing interest to these ideas. And sometimes it's a flashy gentleman that can do so.
And sometimes it's just his look, sometimes you see him wearing jeans and a black leather jacket. And there was another show too, some kind of talk show. And he can actually sing pretty well.
Well, he said he was in a band. So
but I've wanted to see if we could find videos of him in a band, but we haven't found any. I've talked to people who know him, but I've been very, it's been very fortunate. I've talked to some really great people. I mean, Axel Kaiser was talking to Ben Shapiro and Axel was on my show, but I had somebody on my show and later went and talked to Ben Shapiro. Yeah. And, it's very interesting too. I would say that because the conservative media in America has nothing to lose by talking to him, they can, because they wouldn't give the Libertarian Party that kind of positivity. And I agree. Yeah, we got to give him a chance. We got to hope for the best. It's right. And I think there's just you look for reasons to be. I think we all want to be optimistic, and we just grab onto a reason to be optimistic, and this is very much a reason to be optimistic.
That is so true, and it's Jeff Deist had written, and that's kind of the sentiment that I took away, which was the electorate gave him this opportunity. Whether you believe he's going to be successful or not, this is a turning point that we had someone that got in an overwhelming sense. My thing is like, okay, one, it's Argentina. Why not? Let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens down there. What if he just blows this thing up in a great way? Then good. If he screws it up or he doesn't hold to his principles, it'll be easy for libertarians to say, oh, well, it wasn't really tried, right? We could always do that kind of thing like the communists do if he just kind of backs himself off. But I think it's a great opportunity, and it's going worldwide as far as his fame and everything. So for that, I think it's a wonderful thing. I wanted to play you and you can comment on that, but I wanted to play you a clip here. I had done a bit of a show on Milei, and I played a clip of McAdams. Okay, he did a Spaces. Yes. So I'm gonna just play just one little portion, and then let me know if you can't hear it.
Yeah, I've probably heard
listed as a speaker.
Yeah, I'm here. Hey, sorry, I didn't unmute myself. Thanks for inviting
I think
me
on. Our wives need that mute button.
Oh shit, Jeff.
My brain needs
like meta.
I'm going to keep it short because you do have a lot of speakers, and I just want to preface it by saying it's not my place to decide what's good for Argentina, as you point out. We know very little about it, even, and I'm sure Danielle knows quite a bit more than I do. But even those of us who travel there know less about it. I know very little about it, so it's not my position to say whether he will be good for the country or not. In fact, I have absolutely no idea, which is why my position has always been to to stay away from telling other countries who's good and who's bad for them. But I will say, because I've seen several headlines saying, is Milei the new Ron Paul? Is this the Ron Paul revolution? The answer is a categoric no. The positions that he takes are categorically opposed to Ron Paul's positions, particularly when you look at his foreign policy, which, interestingly enough, tracks identically with the foreign policy of the U.S. foreign policy blob, the regime that runs Washington, whether you elect Democrats or Republicans. He's absolutely on message when it comes to Ukraine and Russia. He's absolutely on message when it comes to China. He calls China assassins. He says, I would never promote relations with Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, Nicaragua, or China, and et cetera, et cetera. So certainly when it comes to these areas, he's no Ron Paul. Ron Paul would never say this. I do not claim to be an economist. I do know that there's a lot of concern in Washington about de-dollarization, and it seems to me that Argentina embracing re-dollarization or dollarization would give some people in D.C. who are nervous about this, about the global South increasingly disconnecting from the dollar, to be concerned. A couple of other things. He certainly does not hate the U.S. Federal Reserve. In fact, Ben Bernanke, he said, is his favorite Fed chair, not Volcker, and he was hoping that Larry Summers would take over for Bernanke when he was gone. And I'm not trying to trash the man again. If he does a good job in Argentina, hats off to him. I just don't like this idea that we have to go looking for libertarian heroes. We've been through that with people like Boris Johnson, with Bolsonaro, over and over again. There is no Ron Paul moment overseas. It was a very unique moment that happened in the United States. Conditions are very different. History is very different. And we can't expect to find it. And, there are a lot of libertarian Trotskyites who believe we can export libertarianism as some people understand it here in the U.S. And I just absolutely reject that idea. And if I can say one more thing, Jeff, I'm sorry. I appreciate the accommodation of your time. And I have enormous respect for Jordan Schachtel, who I think is a great analyst. But I happen to also disagree about the press coverage from what I've seen of Milei. Yes, there are catchwords that are repeated every time. That's how the media works. He has to always be considered far right. You've got to put that in your article if you're going to publish it. But for example, if you look at a piece recently in the Washington Post, who is Javier Milei, Argentina's right-wing presidential frontrunner, and then you actually read the article, I would put forth that this is a very sympathetic piece, considering that they are describing someone who normally the Washington Post, if he were an enemy of the U.S. regime, if he were an enemy of the central bankers and the neocons, he would be presented in far different terms. Anyone who disagrees with that should go and look for any portrayal of someone like Putin or Lukashenko or Xi even, or anyone else who was not in favor of the U.S. regime. The final thing I will say is that, yes, he is a populist, and that is great. And they call him a far-right populist. But don't forget that people in D.C. and the regime, they embrace very strongly the dialectical materialism. And if you find that populism is inevitable, you better jump on that horse and make sure that you guide it in the right way. So sorry for taking a lot of your...
Okay, so a few things. I don't know if you want to make some comments.
Yeah. Yeah, well, criticizing, you can criticize foreign countries without necessarily advocating for policies for or against them. I mean, he's often said he just wants to let businesses do what businesses do. I think most American libertarians can agree that North Korea is a horrible dictatorship, and it's not really any country we should emulate. I mean, I don't know how exactly we probably don't have to deal with North Korea if we don't want to. I mean, China and Russia are different stories because they're both very large countries, and they're certainly not really countries that we can just pretend they're not there. I'm not going to mince words. I mean, China and Russia are two of the most genocidal countries in the history of the world. I mean, Russia's been a death cult for 500 years. China's been a death cult for 1,000 years. And if there's any sign of that changing, I hope it's going to happen. But I don't see any sign of it changing anytime soon. That doesn't mean we should cut them off, but we should certainly at least be careful in how we deal with them.
And by the way, I think part of his problem, Daniel McAdams, is it's a personal thing, whereas he works for Dr. Paul, who's a wonderful and sweet man. Yeah. And now you're comparing some third country, to him, and he's taking affront to that. When the reality is, this guy's done something. I'm sad. I'm a big Ron Paul fan, but he was never elected president. So he's done something he hasn't done. Let him have his chance. In addition, I don't know if you caught that one part there, but he had criticism, and he's more explicit on Twitter, which is since the news media isn't as harsh to him as they are Putin, as an example. Therefore, you shouldn't be a fan. I mean, he explicitly said, "Oh, this is all you need to know," because Ben Shapiro liked him. Well, come on.
Yeah,
I could be for like the people in Palestine as an example, and I don't agree with almost anything that a lot of these protesters are out there doing. I'm not standing with them. So you just put that out of your mind, Mr. McAdams. And anyway, that's kind of
I can understand not trusting the Washington Post.
Sure,
that makes perfect sense. It's a. I mean, yeah, there's lots of and there are other people who who have been aligned with libertarians who have been critical of him. I mean, there was a guy at the Latin American Bitcoin conference. Yeah, he spoke at the Latin American Bitcoin conference, which was in Buenos Aires. Mm-hmm. So I would figure he'd be somewhat libertarian, but he's named Carlos Mazlatone, I believe, and he was going on all these rants about Milei. And I said, who is this guy? I said, oh, he's nuts. So I know one of my first tweets about Milei, I tagged Antonella Marti, and she blocked me immediately. She's from Argentina. She's spoken at Atlas Society events, and she blocked me. She does not like Milei. Now, I don't think they're related, but I had Eduardo Marti, who is also from Argentina, on. He was a great guest and really likes Milei. Talked a lot about what's going on there. I mean, yeah, I've gotten to know so many great people from all this. I mean, it really makes me want to go down there, and had some good people, a good Free Stater who's married who has an Argentine wife. He talked about things going on there. And, I'm already, I'm embarrassed to say I haven't had anybody on yet, but I got it. I'm already arranging some discussions this week, about, we got to talk, we got to have a party, it's a great, let's have a victory party and talk about Milei online. So yeah. So that, I would like to talk to some of these people about their concerns, because they do have concerns. But yeah, when the Washington Post is positive about somebody, yeah, I'd be kind of skeptical too. Maybe he's just that. Maybe he's just that good at fooling them. I mean, if libertarians are going to have to, have useful idiots to be successful, and if we can turn some of the bad guys into our useful idiots, let's do it.
By the way, I couldn't agree more. I've written this on Substack. I've been on podcasts saying the exact same thing, which is there is at some point, like RFK Jr. as an example, why don't we use him rather than him always using us? The libertarians get used. You bring someone like this in there, and then you're excited because it's a big. Use him. Let's do the same here. And by the way, it's fine to be excited about Milei. It's in Argentina. It's not going to necessarily affect you at all. We're not down there, but it's a wonderful thing that I think is happening. And be skeptical by all means, but don't just necessarily trash him. That's my take. And as I said, I don't know what Milei has access to. He can't. I suppose he. One thing too is if he learned English, I mean. What kind of speaking fees would he be able to charge? I mean, I think Ron Paul charges $30,000. I mean, Milei could certainly charge. I mean, after 8 years as president, he could. I mean, every libertarian conference is going to want to invite him. All over the world. Well, not even just libertarian. I mean, this is the interesting part: is he's captivating kind of the right wing. And by the way, I would say about the news media saying stuff. I mean, when you're running a guy that against a socialist. And he happens to be a libertarian. Even the Washington Post, Washington Times, they should be able to see that this is the better person than because it's America, right? Even though social, I would imagine. So maybe that's part of that whole thing. Okay. So, any last comments on Mr. Milei and your excitement about it? Well, I've done 130. I have 130 shows uploaded. I have 23 shows about Milei. I started my first show was with 80, so I've done a lot lately, and I've been keeping what I call my 50 show rule. I don't invite anybody back for 50 shows, so I just passed that. So I already talked to the person who came up for 80, and she's going to come on, but I don't want to jinx anything, but I've had a lot, I really think that when I was at Liberty Magazine, our publisher did not want to take sides with any of the factions. He wanted to try to make Liberty Magazine a magazine that all libertarians would read. And I hope that I have a show that as many libertarians as possible are going to listen to. I've sent out. I've had 5 of the 6 presidential candidates of the major presidential candidates for the LP. They're all invited. Who have you had? Give me the list. I've had Chase. I've had Termott. I've had Lars. I've had Rechtenwald, and I've had who's the
I've not had Joshua Smith, but I've had Chase, Lars, Rechtenwald, Termott. Who's the other one? Oh, Hornberger. Yeah, I've had all them. I've had some old people. I've had some young people. My show is of all the American libertarians too. I probably have the most international show. Every once in a while I just talk to some. I've had a guy from the Ayn Rand Center, Armenia. I've had a guy from the their neighbor, Georgia as we call it. By the way, the Ayn Rand Center, Armenia. That guy's put up photos of his events. One of them had 16 females and 8 males. I don't know what they're doing in Armenia, but we need to copy them. So
I put out a tweet with Milei with his girlfriend, and she's hot, and I'm like, this is another reason why he's not a real libertarian.
She's some kind of celebrity too. Yeah, she's like she's probably I think she's Fatima Flores. Yeah, she's definitely she's probably influenced his look. I mean, he's got some because you have a good woman can help you a lot with PR. I've had
they do.
I've had people from Poland on. I've been trying to get a good Russian libertarian on, but none of them want to talk, which I fully understand. I definitely have an interest in Latin America, and I've had quite a few people from South America on. So it's even though I am in America, but it's a worldwide movement, but gives me a lot of nuance as to how things are moving. I like to talk history. I mean, I like to talk a lot of things. I mean, I've been very, very fortunate. It's been a wonder. And podcasting I've learned a lot about myself from podcasting. It's really been, and there's so many people out there fighting the good fights. I mean, all the drama and all the stupid shit really just doesn't matter. It doesn't.
That's true, and it's a great way to meet people, have good conversations. Yeah. So, by the way, you also advertise on the beginning of your show that you wrote a book, a novel.
Yes.
Where can people find that, and what's it about?
You can go to escapevillage.com. It's a sci-fi dystopian novel. I like to think of it as maybe a younger version of Anthem. I do need to get on some sequels for that though, but it's about. It's about a world. It's kind of like the dystopian future we've all come to. I think fictional arguments are probably more powerful than intellectual arguments. Although maybe Milei is proving us wrong in that. It's The most important thing is you've got to do something that's cool, and Milei has definitely done that. That's learn some lessons from this, and hopefully we'll. I do. And I've even had friends who. An associate of mine who had a photo, one guy on my show managed to get a photo op of himself with Victoria Villarreal. So, maybe I will probably faint if Milei's account ever follows me. He hasn't done that yet, but that's definitely going to be a goal, is to get a follow from him.
You might have to start putting your tweets out in Spanish so he at least gets the some good videos.
I don't know if he's running his own social media, and I do want to give credit to people. I mean, Tim Moen the Canadian Libertarian, has had a few people talk about Milei. Fee's had a few things on Milei. Mises Institute has, Cato has, Olga Maria, Latina Libertarian. She's been on top of Milei. Martha Bueno, who's in Florida, she's really been on top of this. She's lived in Cuba and Venezuela, and her mom is from Cuba, so she's fluent in Spanish. There's a lot of good people are talking about this. I've certainly gotten more attention because of this Milei coverage. Although that's not the only thing I've talked about. I've had some good Bitcoiners on. I've had it's been wonderful, and I really got more excited once all this stuff had, because
you've done a lot of work with it. Yeah,
I did 25 shows in September, and as I said, almost everybody says an enthusiastic yes when they want to talk about Milei.
Yeah,
other topics have really been hard to get people to talk about, but not Milei. It's been easy to get people to talk about Milei.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed a bunch of your podcasts, so I would encourage everyone to go check that out. By the way, the dystopian, I did this a watch along alongside Night. I don't know if Schulman.
J. Neil Schulman, rest his soul. I got to meet him. Yeah, we need more. We've lost some of our good libertarian novelists. We need more. I don't want to judge. I haven't read the book, so I'm not going to judge the movie. It's hard to say.
Well, the
movies usually don't work.
The book's good. The acting and the production. I watched it more like a Mr. Science 3000 type of thing. Yeah. We're going to do that with Jones Plantation, but they did ask me to wait.
Good, yes.
They asked me to wait about 8 months before.
I will say that they did a great job on a remastering of We the Living, which was Ayn Rand's first novel, which they actually the fascists got a hold of it and made it into a movie as being anti-communist, and they did it, and they were very true to the movie. It's about 3 hours long, but it's well done. Yeah. So
okay, well, I'll just check that.
That's and you'll watch it with subtitles, of course. But yeah, and I've gotten used to watching things with subtitles because I've watched all of Milei's debates with subtitles. Yeah, they don't come up immediately. I don't know if it takes a while for YouTube to generate them, but like a day later, the subtitles will be up. So I'll just put. And sometimes Milei, they'll translate it as my law instead of just remembering that that's the guy's name. It's because me is my, mi is my, and LEI is apparently law. So yeah.
No, it's good to know.
Yes.
So we'll probably keep this in mind. You and I will be connected, I'm sure. And if I need to bring you back for some updates, we will definitely do that. But I would encourage everyone to go follow you on Twitter, Fountainhead Forum, Chris Baker. You're obviously your podcast, good stuff there. I really appreciate you coming on. Yeah. We're hopeful for Milei. What else you got? And then we'll head out.
It's Fountainhead FM on Twitter because I couldn't go all the way. So I had to shorten it a little bit. But I have my novel. I have I'm working on a domain right now. I'm on Odyssey, YouTube, BitChute, Rumble. I do need to get on some more sites. There's still a lot of things I need to do, but lately there's just been so much to talk about. I've just been producing content, and I'd like to be somebody like Lex Friedman. I want to have good, detailed conversations and I want them to be things that stand the test of time. But this was. It helps when it's something I want to talk about, and it's something, and this is good clickbait. People want to talk about it. People want to know what's going on. It's been a wonderful adventure. I appreciate everybody who's helped me out with it too.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you coming.
I've got
on
a
here
playlist just for Milei. Yeah, thank you very much.
I'll put the playlist and all your links should be in our stuff as well. Yeah, I appreciate you once again. I hope everyone has a good Thanksgiving. You too, Chris.
Yes, have a good Thanksgiving, and all the presidential candidates need to adopt Milei's hairdo. And carry a chainsaw. So thank you. Right. Bye-bye.
Right. So I appreciate it. You can hang on in the back. We're just going to have a excessively long outro, but everyone, thanks. See you. Bye.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, I'm leaving now. Bye, guys.
But she's back.
And now. Chick-fil-A is completely overrated. It's not that good. I prefer Zaxby's. I prefer Popeyes.
Takes a tough man to make a tender forecast, Nick. I guess that's me. Keep fucking that chicken.
Should I vote for Dick Cheney on the Libertarian Party? Do I have an obligation to vote for Dick Cheney?
I would say so.
Yes.
Well, did it work for those people?
No, it never does. I mean, these people somehow delude themselves into thinking it might, but it might work for us.
That one dude was like, not a podcast. I can't find it anywhere. And they don't have video.
Oh, yeah, Peter Janke. Yeah.
Yeah, I blocked him.
I'll do it. If he unblocks me, I'll...
He'll buy your shirt if you unblock him, Bert.
He's a wigger.
Yeah, nothing cooler than a 49-year-old wigger.
Like,
I just started live streaming. Cut me some slack. I'm pretty high tech for a boomer. But anyways,
boomer.